NightMerica is an independently produced podcast. If you like what we're doing, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/NightMerica. And please tell your friends about us.
Welcome to NightMerica, a podcast that takes you on a tour of the abnormal, paranormal, weirdly true, and truly weird in every corner across this nation. Because, to paraphrase Ray Parker Jr., whether it's ghosts, aliens, monsters, or monstrous humans, there's something strange in your neighborhoods. Episode 10, Farming for Death. I don't know if I really, fully committed to that. I don't know, but I'm sure there's probably a low-hanging pun for farming and
that
crops.
We're just missing.
Like, crops of murder. No.
Children of the corn.
Children, yeah.
Murder of the corn.
Except mine isn't set in, the Midwest, so it's not really a corn. Not really corny enough. Okay, well, we'll just stick with farming for death. But, before we get into that topic, how's your quarantine going?
My quarantine is going is good. I can't complain. I'm very lucky that I can be in Arizona with my family. I did decide to sign up to get a certification in HR, which is kind of a boring thing to do, but apparently this test is really hard. And I've been studying for 2 solid months, and I just realized the test is 2 weeks away, and I'm panicking. So there's that.
I like school. I've always liked school. I'm always an academic. But yeah, I kind of wonder if I were to go back, how I would do with the whole testing thing. I feel like my brain is not as elastic as it once was as far as testing for things.
My brain is Swiss cheese.
Yeah. And I imagine but I imagine a lot of people are going through something similar as far as it's probably hard to learn and retain right now during this weird time. Over here in New York City, it's seems like spring has finally sprung. Got up to 80 degrees on this day that I'm recording this. Yeah, so it's really lovely outside. So it is indeed dope. So before we get into the topic for the day, which is farms, if you guys hadn't already picked up on that, or crops, or corn, not corn. But, we kind of introduced this idea in the last episode of some weird news. What weird headline did you find in your travels this week?
So this week, I'm actually going back to New York City. At the beginning of this month, there was a guy who was cleaning out his mother's apartment and found a standalone freezer chest. Now that alone is a weird article, because who in the world has room for a standalone freezer chest in a New York City apartment? I don't even have a bed. I sleep on a pull-out couch. But that's not the weird story. The weird story is he found a decomposed body in this freezer chest. Of course, screamed, freaked out, called the police. They came on scene, and detectives determined that this body was in there for 10 years. 10 years.
Was it a male or female corpse?
It was so decomposed they couldn't figure out on site. And I've been trying to do research to...
Even if it's decomposed, wouldn't you be able to see a little shriveled up, decomposed, mummified penis?
A little shriveled up what?
Mummified penis.
I don't know. They said it was so decomposed and taken apart they couldn't figure out what the gender was, what the ethnicity was, nothing. So I've been trying to do research to find any more information, but I don't know if coroner's office are just so backed up with corona cases right now. I can't find anything. But I have set my news alerts to the story, so hopefully I could do a case on it.
All right, Britt is on the case. The thought, the thought process for me with this is it's both shocking and surprising, and yet kind of not, because with all the people that live in the New York City area, 8.5 million people, maybe more. There's a lot of secrets out there, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I always love the stories of like, well, love. It's also sad when you hear about like these exotic animals that are being kept in New York City apartments.
Yes.
I've heard about like giant snakes or big cats like tigers and stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean the fact that uh, this guy's his mom, uh,
Yeah.
had something makes me wonder. Like, I hope it is not something especially like tragic, like someone that went missing. I hope it was like a bad guy. I hope it was some
Yes.
guy that like tried to break into her house and
Oh my God,
you
that would be
know
great.
and she just like took him out 10 years ago and was like, well, now I got a body I got to deal with.
That would be
And
awesome.
had he not visited his mom like and ever wondered what was in the freezer chest?
That's the thing. That like how in this tiny New York apartment are you not like, "Yo mom, what's in this extra freezer?" They said it was like all duct taped up.
Yeah, that's kind of noticeable. That screams decomposed body inside,
Yeah. And
you know.
the landlord said she was super particular about people coming in to do any touch-ups on the building or anything like that,
Well, wouldn't
understandably.
you be? It's like,
I mean, listen,
I mean,
I listen to
I
so
am
much true
already,
crime.
but
I'm weird about it anyway.
I'm weird about it anyway, just because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a weird thing about people being in my space. But so taped up, so that means she was either, oh man, like, wonder if this person was still alive when they put her in the freezer and like, and
Oh
she
my
taped it all
God.
up and just like talk about a horrible, horrible death. Now I really hope it was
Yep.
a bad guy.
Yep.
Well,
That would be great.
uh,
What's your story?
yeah. So this comes from the Sun, out in UK. It's obviously a tabloid paper, but the story is about a house in Louisiana, a supposedly haunted mansion. Now the whole thing is it's being compared, according to the Sun, being compared to the Amityville horror
Mm.
house in New York.
Hmm.
The deal is the listing of this real estate property is that it's being given away for free to anybody brave enough to live in it. But the person, the ex-resident claims that the spirit of her great grandmother still stirs the pot in the kitchen, and supposedly the
Mm.
owners are desperate to get rid of this rundown house, and it has a reputation for being haunted by previous occupants, including this great grandmother. It was a 4 bedroom, 3 bathroom house in Youngsville, Louisiana, built in the 1930s, and there's some photos of the woman that's supposedly haunted, and she looks like she could have a creepy ghost grudge to her. Now, so supposedly a lot of ex-residents and visitors have said that they've indeed had spooky experiences in the house, but someone else says that it's not a scary ghost, that her name is Adele and she was a sweet woman and
Does she say hello from the
not
other
menacing.
side?
No, this is the thing is oh, I got you. Yeah, sorry, it took me a second. Uh well done. Uh, that was good. I'm now just embarrassed it took me that long to pick up on that. But supposedly as a ghost Adele was always cooking in the kitchen and always stirring something in the pot. And now you can hear somebody picking up a lid in the kitchen or jangling pots or stirring a spectral spoon in the pots. Here's my thing, is like, a 4 bedroom, 3 bathroom house, like assuming it's structurally sound, that seems like a small trade off for a free house. You probably still have to pay taxes on it, I'm guessing.
That's what
But
I was gonna
um,
say. Are you getting
yeah,
the
so it's probably
house,
not.
but you need to get the property? Like you have to have the land where you're putting it? Is that what it is? Or you get all of it?
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really get into that part of
Hmm.
it. That's a solid question. And what do you do with the freezer that's duct taped together in the house? No, no, that's
Are
not a thing.
you
But
going to
it,
apply?
I don't know. I mean, I it's okay. So apparently it was updated in the 1960s. So it's not like it seems like there's been some, some strange sounds in there as well. Like, yeah, I would totally take this house. I
Do
mean,
it.
it looks shabby, but it doesn't look like it's in total disrepair. It looks like it could be, you know, put, updated even more. Apparently they realized it was going to cost them 80 grand to demolish the house. So, yeah, so that might be yeah, I think it would be worth taking it on. Nothing
Yeah.
about this calls to mind the Amityville Horror House, by the way. I think this was the Sun just needing to have a
Yeah.
clickbaity headline because
Totally.
that was the site of, you know, 6 murders, I believe.
Yes.
And horrible, horrible tragedy that then supposedly led to haunted activity. But
This is
yeah,
just like a grandma stirring
yeah.
soup.
Ooh, stirring the crock pot, the spoon. Well, you don't stir a crock
Do
pot,
we
but
think that she would actually cook for you?
maybe if you buy the ingredients and then just set them out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I hope no ghost accidentally makes me a casserole.
Totally. That would be
Um,
great. I'm so sick of eating my own cooking during quarantine.
yeah, uh, ghost cooking was the best. But you'll have to look at this photo. Perhaps we'll throw it up on the
Yeah, let's do
Instagram
it.
page. But she does look like if I encountered the woman in this photo as a ghost, I would stop in my
Scared.
tracks. Yeah. So yeah. Interestingly enough, this was part of a plantation at one point, which
Mm.
that's not why we were talking about farms today, but it is serendipitous.
Yeah.
Um, Why don't I dive into my story
Yeah,
first, since
since it's a
I.
plantation.
Well, yeah, it's a plantation, and interestingly enough, is in Louisiana. So
What?
just to set it up, yeah, it just happens. I didn't plan it that way. It's just it happened to be coincidence, coinky dink. So sounds of crying children, sounds of gunfire, mysterious smells, vanishing objects, supposed death by a poisoned birthday cake, and spectral handprints seen in the mirror to this day. This is the tale of the Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. Let's kind of flash back a little bit. The house was built in the 18th century, 1796 to be precise. St. Francisville is about 26 miles north of Baton Rouge, and 98 miles northwest of New Orleans. The house, the style I've been there. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous home. Creole cottage style houses, I believe how they describe the architecture. 22 rooms, 2 stories. This massive, gorgeous chandelier. I think it's 500
Mm.
pounds chandelier. This very long veranda that runs the entire facade of the house, and these cast iron railings. There's 6 chimneys. I know this is not Architectural Digest, the podcast, but
No, it
I,
is.
I
We
just
are
I,
now.
I love learning about the architecture, and so I love architecture anyhow. But it does look like it would have hauntings, but it doesn't look scary or creepy. Now, is home to tragedy and allegedly still home to ghosts. And it at one point existed on 600 acres. At that point, it was called Laurel Grove. Now, it passed through a lot of hands over the years, but the original occupants were supposedly an indigenous tribe of the Tunica tribe of Native Americans. So supposedly was a ancient Native American burial ground. So I think is this the first Native American burial ground that we're talking about on this podcast?
On the main episode, yes, the Patreon episode on the Dean House in Calgary was suspectedly built on Indian burial
Yeah,
grounds.
I mean
But
it's one
first
of the,
main episode.
yeah, I mean it's one of the classic tropes of any good ghost story, Indian burial ground. But with reason. Like, I question some of the validity of some of these stories, but obviously there were a lot of indigenous people that were here before
Mm-hmm.
the white folk came in and decided to take it for themselves. Anyhow, said to be home to 12 ghosts. Supposedly 10 murders occurred in the house. It was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, where they said when they filmed there they experienced difficulties. My old pals at Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters both have filmed there. And the house, interestingly enough, appeared in a November 1980 issue of Life magazine as one of these notoriously haunted locations. Now let's talk about the one confirmed murder. There was really only one confirmed murder that you could track down there. William Drew Winter, he was an attorney who lived on the plantation between 1865 and 1871. According to the Point Coupee, I could be mispronouncing that, Point Coupee Democrat newspaper, which is a funny name for a newspaper.
It's so funny. I love it.
He was teaching, Winter was teaching a Sunday school lesson in the gentleman's parlor of the house. He heard someone approach the house on horseback. The stranger called out to him and told him that he had some business with him, with Winter. Winter went outside and was shot. He collapsed on the porch and he died.
Just like that?
Just like that. Those
Damn.
inside the house were stunned by the sound of gunfire and the retreating horse. And they went outside and they found the man had fallen and died. And he was buried the following day, which is a fast burial. And a man named E.S. Weber was to stand trial for the murder, but no outcome of the case was ever recorded. So it seems that his killer, Winter's killer, remains unidentified and unpunished. And his wife, sadly, devastated by the event and never remarried. And she lived on the property with her mother and brothers until she died at the age of 44. It's fairly young.
Yeah.
So there's that. The other story in there, as I said, there are reported sounds of gunfire and whatnot surrounding the house. Perhaps a more popular tale is the story of a ghostly slave girl who is called Chloe. Now, this is actually a pretty famous ghost. In 1992, the owner of the house photographed what appeared to be a slave girl standing between two of the buildings on the plantation. And now this is an impressive photograph from 1992. You guys will throw that up there on Instagram as well. National Geographic actually filmed there and said that the photograph contained what appeared to be an apparition of a slave girl. Now, take this with a grain of salt. When you're trying to write a story or talk about, ghosts, it always helps to say you have a photo. But this is an impressive photo, and looks like a person. And it's called the Chloe Postcard. They still sell this at the Myrtles Plantation.
Ooh.
Supposedly, the ghost of this girl has been seen in a green turban. She wanders the place at night. Sometimes there are cries of little children that accompany her appearance. And those who are sleeping are sometimes awakened by her face peering at them from the side of the bed, which is chilling, which is just a totally chilling account. There's a lot of problems with this, the origins of Chloe. Now, the story goes back to the 1950s. That's when the story seemed to be first recorded. Apparently, the owner of the house at the time, Clark Woodruff, was said to have a wandering eye and was promiscuous, and his wife was pregnant with their third child, allegedly, and he had an intimate relationship with one of his slaves who was Chloe. And she was known, at one point, she was sort of fell out of favor with Woodruff and was sort of dismissed to other tasks, but she was caught eavesdropping on Woodruff and his wife or his family having conversations, and to punish her, her ear was cut off, and she was then known to wear a green turban around her head to hide the scar. And then it was said that the family got sick, that supposedly Chloe put a small amount of poison into a birthday cake that was made for Woodruff's oldest daughter. And apparently the poison was crushed oleander flowers. And two of the children, Sarah, the two children of Woodruff and Sarah Matilda, his wife, each had slices of the cake. Woodruff did not have any of it, and they all supposedly died of poisoning as a result. And then the other slaves, to punish Chloe and to avoid punishment themselves, supposedly hanged her from a tree, and then her body was weighted and thrown into a river. And then the dining room where the children and the wife died was closed off, and it was never used again as long as Woodruff lived. There's a lot of questions about this. So this is the popular ghost that on the Myrtles website they talk about, that is known to haunt this plantation. I always hate to be the one that like bursts the bubble of ghost stories. It doesn't seem that there's a lot of truth to this tale. The Sarah Matilda, who was the mother, did die tragically, but from yellow fever. And her children, which were not two daughters, there was a son and a daughter, died a year after she had, more than a year after Sarah did, and they didn't die from poisoning. And another daughter actually was in the picture who lived to a ripe old age. And so it doesn't quite follow. However, obviously a lot of tragedy took place at this home. I mean, it was a plantation. They did have slaves, and there are reports, a lot of death, including the murder, and then a lot of yellow fever, and then things that we don't know. Certainly, there had to be deaths that occurred on the property that we don't know about. And so, yes, there's this house, or there's this mirror in the house, and spectral images of the supposed murder victims from the home are said to manifest. I think it's kind of easily debunked, the the mirror, not to be a buzzkill. I think it's actually just paneling behind the mirror itself.
You're probably right.
But the sounds of crying children, people report that. Some people say that they've seen the ghost of a girl in a green turban. There have been other photos documented of supposedly a girl wearing a turban. Some are questionable photos. The Chloe postcard is actually rather interesting to me. That one I actually find intriguing. And then what's kind of a cool tidbit is I love it when this stuff crosses over with pop culture. There was a TV movie called The Long Hot Summer, filmed in 1985, or it was released in 1985. And during filming, the crew says that they arranged furniture in a game room. And when they came back, and this is supposedly where the murders took place, when they came back, everything was moved back to its original place. So maybe it's a ghost, maybe it's someone rearranging that furniture because they were trying to be helpful. Who knows? But so yeah, a lot of stories that have emerged out of this, and some facts, a lot of fiction. But regardless, it would not surprise me that a location like this would carry energy and carry some sort of haunting associated with it. So,
for sure. Well, and like of course, me of all people understands that murder is, a good or interesting story to tell. And so, of course, the story of Chloe possibly poisoning them is an interesting story, but you don't have to be murdered to like leave your energy and a ghost behind. So even if they died of yellow fever, all of these people died of some sort of plague in this house, it's still their house and they can still haunt it and be active afterlife in there.
Well, even if, yeah, I mean, again, I think I say this a lot. There's no rule book to the paranormal that we know of.
Totally.
And so even if people died peacefully and had a long life there, they're, in theory, leaving something behind. And yeah, there, one documented murder. I seriously wouldn't be surprised to find out about more, but, trying to look at both the actual facts that have been recorded by historians and separate that from the lore, although the lore and the legend is fun too. And I just want to shout out to I don't really think it's very active these days, but prairieghosts.com was really great about having solid facts that didn't debunk the paranormal activity, but they did a lot of research on this, and I definitely leaned heavily on them for this. So thank you, Prairie Ghosts, wherever you are. So yeah, 2 Louisiana stories. Myrtles Plantation, definitely famous. Highly recommend visiting it. It's worth like taking a night away from New Orleans, from a New Orleans trip, to check it out.
Yeah, I really want to go to New Orleans. Like, that is one of the top places of mine once quarantine lifts. So
yeah, definitely, understandably so. It is. I was actually supposed to go down there, I think, during quarantine, and then had a detour. It's okay. A lot of people's plans were upset, right? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, it's well worth it. It's a great town. But I digress. Where are we going? Where are we farming for murder?
We are farming for murder in my heart of the Midwest. I will confess I picked this week's topic because this is my most favorite true crime story ever.
So viewers are setting. This is like a lot of expectations. You're setting a high bar right now.
I mean, this story has like a little bit of everything. So I'm doing the story of my favorite female serial killer, a Midwest girl after my own heart, and America's first documented Black widow, Belle Gunness. So my main sources were legendsofamerica.com, biography.com, and then there's a really good article by Daniel Rennie on All Things Interesting.
Just to interject for a moment, yeah. Is this also, even though you listed your sources, do you know this story so well that you could just tell it without having done any fresh research?
Probably. I did research to get dates and names,
right?
Because there are a lot of people in this story, and I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible because it's names, and like, she was born in Norway but then grew up in America, but like made friends with Norwegian people, so a lot of the names are confusing too. But
lay it on me.
Lay it on. So, like I said, Belle was born in Norway in 1859. And like typical Norwegian, Western Europe type of women, she was tall, broad, big-boned. I'm from that kind of area. I'm 5'9". She was 5'9", 200 pounds. Like, she was a broad. And she immigrated to the U.S. when she was 22 in search of like the great American life, as so many people were, as well as money. And she settled in my home state of Chicago and worked as a servant for a wealthy family. In 1884, she was 25. She got married to a man named Mads Sorensen, and together they opened a candy shop. So sweet. You think
I would never go to a candy shop owned by a name named Mads Sorensen. That's like a serial killer name right there. But
he is not the killer. And I think a lot of people in Chicago probably felt the same way as you, because the store was not remotely successful. And one night it just mysteriously burned down. So weird how that can happen. A fire can hit a building and nothing else around it. So they collected the insurance money, and instead of reopening, they decided to just buy a home. Quickly after they got married, they had 4 kids: Carolyn, Axel, Myrtle, and Lucy. However, Carolyn and Axel died as infants of acute colitis. And if you don't know, interestingly, poisoning and acute colitis have the same symptoms. So fever, diarrhea, stomach cramps. So an interesting kind of comparison there. They did collect life insurance on both of those children and then adopted a 10-year-old girl. So now they have 3 kids. 2 are biologically there. So now we fast forward to 1900, and sadly, Mads has passed away. The doctor that immediately came on site said it looked like he had died of strychnine poisoning, but Belle was like, well, I don't know about that. Let's get a second opinion. So she went to another doctor who was like, oh, no, it's just regular heart failure. So that was the coroner's report, was that it was regular heart failure. And what is so interesting is the exact day he died just happened to be the same day that his 2 life insurance policies overlapped. So his family demanded an autopsy and tried to figure out what happened because they truly believe that he was poisoned. But Belle kind of flirted with the cops and kind of swayed her way, and nothing ended up happening. No charges were filed, and she was given $8,500, which in today's money would be $260,000. So that is a ton of money for back then. She ended up moving her 3 living children, the 2 regular children, then the adopted daughter is also regular, but birthed children, and then the adopted daughter. I realize I just triggered so many adopted kids. I'm so sorry.
You're going to get letters, but not the good kind.
Nope. Sorry, guys. You're regular too. She moved them all to LaPorte.
You're not making it better.
I'm not. I'll just shut up. She moved them all to LaPorte, Indiana. Because when you get rich, you decide to move out of the city and instead move to Indiana. People from Indiana, you can send me letters too. Indiana kind of stinks. Moving in, she then fell in love with the local butcher, a man by the name of Peter Gunness. Obviously, she marries him because they have the same last name. They got married in 1902, and I want to point out to all you single ladies that at this time, Belle was 43 years old. So don't be discouraged. If it can happen to Belle, who had this kind of shitty reputation at 43 years old, it can happen for all of us guys. So keep the faith. So
wait, did she have a shitty reputation at this point?
Well, not because they moved, but she did back in Chicago, which is part of why she moved.
Oh, right. So maybe in Indiana, nobody knew about
it.
All right. Okay.
So they got married in 1902 in April. In December that year, Peter dies. Belle told police that this butcher died because a sausage grinding machine fell off the top shelf onto his head. The local coroner came, said, nope, it's definitely murder. And then one of her kids told her friend that Belle had actually hit him in the head with a cleaver. I just want to say to this girl, your mom is nuts. Clearly she is nuts. Why would you say that? You lived in Chicago, snitches get stitches. Keep your mouth shut. Anyway, her brother-in-law took his niece away. So I realized I didn't say this. The butcher had a daughter from a previous marriage. And so when all of this happened, the brother-in-law took this girl away because he was like, yo, I'm pretty sure this is murder as well. I don't want my niece to be with this crazy woman. And they alert the police and say this was definitely murder. But Belle puts on her charm again. And she was pregnant at the time with Peter Gunness's baby. and the police don't charge her. No charges are ever filed. And she was given $89,000 in life insurance money.
Holy moly.
Yep.
89,000 in that.
89,000. Well, no, in today's money.
In today's money, okay.
In today's money, which still.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, oh yeah,
after
yeah.
260, like, this woman is getting shit done. So, after that, she has the idea to put an ad in the newspaper looking for a partner. So, she puts an ad in the Personals that says, "Comely widow who owns a large farm in one of the finest districts in LaPorte County, Indiana, desires to make acquaintance of a gentleman equally well provided, with a view of joining fortunes. No replies by letter considered unless sender is willing to follow answer with a personal visit. Triflers need not apply." Some of you might remember that I had triflers need not apply, in my dating profile. Led to no success for me, which understandably so. It did, however, work for her, and the men started rolling in to Indiana and never rolling out. Her first suitor was Joe Moe. Can we also just have a moment for his name? Joe Moe.
Yeah, not as cool as Mad Sorensen, but
no, that's true. He was from Minnesota, and he brought all his money to help, in quotes, pay off her mortgage, because she clearly had already paid it off with all this life insurance money, but brought all of his money to help pay off her mortgage, and never was seen again. He just disappeared off the face of the earth. Shortly after, a man by the name of George Anderson from Missouri came up. He brought all his money, brought all his belongings, got moved in, ready for his new life with Belle. And in the middle of the night, he woke up to Belle leaning over him, holding a candle and staring at him in the face. So you told your story about the scary woman stirring the pot. I imagine it's the same kind of face. He jumped out. No,
the ghost of Chloe also is supposedly, if it's Chloe, known for staring people in the when they wake up, seeing her leaning over. Although I think I would take the ghost of Chloe over Belle based on what you're saying. But
for sure. Well, he had the same vibe as you. Panicked, got dressed, and just ran. He ran away. Never came back for his things. Never came back for his money. Just left. In 1907, so a few years later, a man by the name of Ole Budsberg. His first name is O-L-E. The names in the story are also just what get me. He's from Wisconsin, and he was seen at the LaPorte Savings Bank signing over all of his property to Belle. And so his sons found out and called up being like, "What is going on? What's happening?" And Belle answered the phone and was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know who, that name isn't familiar to me. Nope, I don't know who it is." And just acted totally dumb. So obviously she killed him too. So how is she getting rid of all of these bodies? Because I'm only naming a few. There were a ton more. Her ranch hand, Ray Lamphere, was 10 years younger than her and madly in love with her. I don't know what it is. I'll post her picture on the Instagram. I don't think she was a super hot chick, but apparently she just had her ways.
I was looking up photos of her. There's one where she's younger, where she looks a little crazy, but also has an attractive appearance. But it also, apparently, she ended up being quite, as you mentioned earlier, she was a solid woman.
Yes, she was a solid woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so Lamphere fell in love with her.
Is just madly in love with her, and he's going to do anything for her. So he is burying all these bodies and, doing whatever she needs, but he starts to get jealous of the newest man that's arrived on the property, Andrew Hegelian, I hope I'm saying that right. And he kills him before the agreed upon time. So because he wasn't able to give his family like enough, like, hey, I've arrived, you know, all is good. Andrew's family gets super suspicious. And so they go down to kind of see what's coming up, and Belle freaks out, thinking Ray is clearly a liability. And so she fires him. And he starts threatening Belle and her family and saying like really bad things. And in 1908, he makes good on his promise. This was only like a few months later. He burned down her house. The house goes up in flames. I mean, of course, it's like farmland of Indiana, so people aren't able to get on site super quick. And by the time they get there, the house is already totally borne down, and there are 4 corpses on site. The decapitated body of a woman and the bodies of 3 children. So, what happened? The coroner...
Where do they fit into the story?
So, the children were her children.
Oh, okay.
But the coroner comes in and notes a curious detail that the body of the woman would have only measured 5 feet 3 inches tall. So Belle was 5'9". And where's the head? All a little bit fishy.
She was a big woman, like, you know, certainly not a
little girl. And the body was only 5'3". So, very curious. Well, Ray was sentenced for 21 years in prison for murder and arson, but passed away a little bit later of tuberculosis. But before he passed away, he spilled those beans. He confessed that he and Belle had put an ad in a paper for a housekeeper. The plan was to kill her, plant her body, and then he and Belle were going to run away together. But, of course, she fired him. Things got ugly between the two of them, and she did run away, but not with him. She had supposedly been seen in Mississippi and California with all of her money, just kind of living her own life after killing her children and killing estimates about 40 people. After all of this, they, of course, dug up the grounds and found bodies of 8 identifiable people, 7 men, and then 1 girl. They believed to possibly be the adopted daughter of Belle. And then there's 16 unknown men and 1 woman. Legendsofamerica.com has a pretty good guess of who these bodies could be based on reports of missing people in surrounding areas, but it's a long list. If you're curious, you can visit that site to kind of get the full rundown. But it is estimated that she killed about 40 people and then just went on the run, never to be caught. And that's Belle Gunness.
Just a couple little tidbits that I saw that I wanted to ask about. So some people, I'm looking at the Daily News had an article about this. So do some people say that she had possibly murdered as many as 180 people?
Oh, really? I've always kind of heard 40, but I believe it, man. She was nutters.
Prolific, yeah. And is it accurate that this is like one of those stories that I was aware of, tangentially, but I probably couldn't have, quoted the name Belle Gunness, other than just knowing there was like this woman that killed a lot of people. So this article says that she took out a insurance policy on the house, or visited a lawyer and took out a will, I guess, a half day before the fire. Is that?
I didn't know that, but I believe it. I mean, she was smart when it came to working all these insurance policies.
Apparently she... I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would say smart.
Should I not speak with her with as much admiration as I do?
You do seem like, this is not going to help that dating profile.
I just kind of feel like I connect with her. Like,
This is not helpful. This is also potential testimony, you realize that, like, or admissible evidence, this podcast. But so apparently, you say smart, but she's not being very subtle. Like, so apparently a half day before the fire, she visited a lawyer, drafted a will, and specifically said, I'm afraid that full lamp here is going to kill me and burn my house.
Yes, she did say that.
But then she bought 5-gallon can of kerosene. So this is not someone that's being particularly subtle with. I mean, it seems like she's just operating out in the open, and nobody's really paying attention. And like, this estimates that she may have stolen upwards of $6 million in today's money. Man.
Yep.
I mean, she was a good thief.
Totally.
So what happened to her?
She went on the run. There's a guy in California who thinks he might have been bamboozled by her going under the name, I think, Esther something. Like, she changed her name and was just kind of going that she fit the description. But she was never caught. They don't know where she died. Like, another bit I like is she left her fake teeth on the scene. So, like, the dentist was like, oh, well, yeah, this could be her. But, like, she just left her fake teeth and then got new ones.
Well, with $6 million, or equivalent of $6 million, she can
get
afford
you some nice new teeth, girl.
Yeah. So it's like citing the fur. Oh, I know. Like, so there's been songs and stuff written about her.
Yes. Hell's Bell.
Yeah. And then sightings of her continued until, according to this article, until like 1931. Supposed sightings. Wow.
Yep. That's my girl Belle.
I don't know whether I find the story more disturbing or the fact that you have such clear admiration.
You know, it's like they didn't let women work back then. You know, we weren't allowed to hold down jobs. How else this chick supposed to feed her family?
The family she killed, you mean?
Well, she kept them alive for a while.
We should follow up on this. Apparently they exhumed the grave that was believed to be her. When people assumed it was her. Yes. And I don't know if they did a DNA test or anything on it, but
I think they did, and I don't think the DNA matched.
Yeah. Well, she was busy.
She's a busy broad.
I'd once dated a girl from Norway, and now I guess I'm glad that she didn't murder me. Not leaping to the conclusion that all people from Norway want to murder you, but
so many hate mail letters from this episode.
Yeah.
Adopted kids, Indiana, Norway.
I do want to hear from people in, Scandinavian countries if they know anything about
totally.
Belle. And I wonder if are there any archives of her letters still out there?
I don't know. I'm sure there's got to be something. She put so many ads in newspapers. There's got to be a newspaper somewhere with it.
Someone should have put out a posing ad. By the way, this person has a lot of missing husbands. Well done, Belle. Wherever you may be.
Wherever you may be.
All right. Well, that is truly disturbing. But to cleanse the palate of the murder and mayhem, let's talk a little bit about some paranormal pop culture. What are you into this week?
This week, actually, I have kind of something a little bit off the beaten path. I call her my aunt. She's my mom's best friend, but she's been part of my life almost my whole life. She is a professional tarot reader, and she shared with me these crazy Italian oracle cards. They're called Intuiti creative cards. They're created by an artist named Matteo Di Pascal, and a like tarot expert, Alessandra Mazzucchelli. But they are the most beautiful cards I've ever seen. And unlike tarot, where they can have kind of certain meanings where one can lead one way if it's next to another card, these just have stories with them. And they are the craziest stories ever. I'll put pictures of them up on the Instagram so you guys can see. But like, you pull one card and it'll read you this story about like a man who's gambling and then like walks away from the gambling table with a smile on his face. They're just like super abstract. Or another one is like a story about a woman who goes down the stairs, and with every step she turns more and more into a beast with like hair growing, and then she starts crawling like a baby. Like, they truly are the craziest cards I've ever seen. But they're
that pretty
cool.
much sums up my current quarantine experience. I've become a hairy beast, and
I have to
just
say,
crawling around on the floor.
You were one of the first people I started to kind of worry about with quarantine, just because I know like your facial hair and like hair situation. But looking at you now on the Zoom, you look like you always do.
Well, the hair is definitely shaggy, but I've filmed, I don't know if I should be saying this, but we've been filming episodes of Paranormal Caught on Camera in quarantine, so I do have sort of a pseudo studio setup in my apartment, and so I've had to, keep somewhat clean for those shoots. So that is, without that, I would be rocking a full quarantine beard and going feral, I believe. But so yeah, that's the only reason I'm actually maintaining any kind of appearance is for TV. So you were right to worry. However, I do find like I do kind of need a haircut. I'm noticing like little wisps of hair flying everywhere. But that's not my pop culture recommendation for the week. It's not me. Although you should watch Paranormal Caught on Camera on Travel Channel
every Sunday.
Every Sunday. Even if whenever you listen to this episode years from now, just turn it on Sunday. See if it's airing. My interest this week is I actually just briefly forgot it. Apparently it made such an impact on me. No, I was watching more of Lock and Key on Netflix, and this is a little bit dated since the show came out a few months back, but yeah, I've just been slowly following that through, and it's definitely a fun, I wouldn't say creepy. I was a big fan of the graphic novels. It's not really a creepy adaptation of those stories, but it's definitely compelling, and I'm really enjoying the characters within it. And the idea is that a family suffers a tragedy, and their father dies, and they go back to his childhood home and go to renovate it while they live in it. And they start discovering, the three kids discover these keys, and each key has a different opens sort of a different power or ability, or sometimes literally a door to another realm. And it's horror tinged because other forces emerge seeking the power of these keys, and there's some other mysteries revolving around the family. And it's sort of the type of show that calls to mind some of the like classic 80s entertainment. Kids, even though there's a mom in the picture, even though there's adults around, it's very much kids left to their own devices to
latchkey kids.
To I guess sort of literally to
Were you
battle.
a latchkey kid?
No. I was fortunate growing up that my mom stayed at home and took care of us kids. And I was also, as a youngest of 5, wasn't really home alone that often.
Yeah, that's true.
Until later on, when I was a teenager at that point. But yeah, so this calls to mind the idea of like one of the tropes of like some of those 80s movies and pop culture was there's adults in the picture, but they're not really involved. So the kids are left to their own devices to battle evil, or deal with nefarious forces. So it kind of reminds me of that. So in that way, I'm kind of digging it. Yeah. So I think we've pretty much reached the end of yet another episode.
If you like NightMerica, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/NightMerica. And consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us a follow on social media and share this with your friends.
And if you'd like to share your paranormal stories or even seek paranormal advice, which is for entertainment purposes only, email nightmericashow@gmail.com.